The Badgers pick up a commitment at a spot they need. Why? Cairo Skanes fits the mold that this staff looks for.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I'm your host, Ryan Harris, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we're talking about a new commit for the Badgers at a spot of need, what the cornerback room looks like with a couple departures and a couple people coming in, plus some of your thoughts, your comments, all that today on the Locked On Podcast Network, brought to you by Gametime. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Create an account, use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. And let's fire the cannons, man, because we got a commitment. Let's go.
Fire the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
Okay, so what are the Badgers getting with Cairo Skanes, which I believe is how you pronounce it, but I'm not 100% sure. 6 foot, 160-pound cornerback, Providence Day School in Charlotte, North Carolina. Offers from Michigan State, Duke, North Carolina, Miami of Ohio, among many others. Right, so it's not an elite offer list, but I think what you're looking for here, and we're going to put some film up as we talk about it so y'all can see. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see Cairo and some of the traits I'm about to talk about and why I think he matches up pretty well with what this staff looks for in cornerback recruiting. If you're on the podcast, I'll talk through it as well, so no stress there. All right, let's get the film up first so you guys can see it while I talk about it. Okay, throw Cairo Skanes up there. So one of the things to me, when you're looking at cornerback recruiting and what this staff has prioritized and what they've kind of looked for, it's been typically length. It's been physical attributes. That's what they did at Cincinnati. You look at a Xavier Lucas. You look at a Jay Harper. You look at Jonas Duclona, who came over originally with the long arms. It's something they target. Nizer Forkerine, something they target, right? They really want length. You look at the frame here. This is a long cornerback. You know what he reminds me of? For those people who really follow recruiting, the Recruitniks, he reminds me of Zay Gentry. He reminds me of Rakeem Stroud. These were players that the Badgers were in early. You see the big frame there. He hits like Nizer Forkerine, right? I'm taking some notes as I was watching film earlier. He really comes up and takes great angles, runs through ball carriers. He's a really physical cornerback for his size. I know the listed measurables 6'1", 155. He's not 155. He looks bigger than that. Definitely a player, again, this reminds me a lot of a Nizer Forkerine type of player who has been rock solid as a tackler this year. Just physical, coming up field, hitting guys. Here you're going to see him on special teams. I love players on special teams. He's going to take the block off somebody there because it shows that they give a crap, quite frankly. If you're playing on special teams, you're playing corner, you're hitting people, you're covering punts. You just have to have a certain – listen, coaches aren't going to put you out there if you don't have some type of physical ability on special teams. If you don't have the willingness to run down like a maniac and cover a punt, you're not going to be out there. And it always speaks really highly of the players who are some of your best players when they're also some of your core special teams guys. So I always find that really intriguing. You see a variety of coverages he's in. He's going to play some off. He's going to play some press man. They play a little single high with him in the clips. Good hands, really on the again, these are highlight films, but you see the ability to break in a ball, make a catch, and transition into being the returner with the ball. Big frame. This is, again, what they look for. They look for long, rangy cornerbacks. I think what you're looking at with the prospect like this, who doesn't have the most elite offer list. There is a Michigan State offer. There is an NC State offer. He was committed to Miami of Ohio. But they're looking at the physical tools. They're saying this is a physically big cornerback that we think we can develop. Get him into our strength and conditioning program. Get him a little bigger. Get him a little faster. Get him a little stronger. But you just can't teach 6'1" corners with long arms that will come up and hit people. There's just not a lot of those players, right? And you can see here covering on special teams. If you're watching the clips, you see several where I think this is another one where he's going to break on the ball. Good hands. I think I question the deep speed a little bit. I'm not 100% sure how fast he is. I think that's something that, again, that might be where that Nizer Forkerine comp kind of comes into play, who's going to be kind of a boundary corner, blow up screens, tackle an open field, contest jump balls, good in the red zone. But maybe he's not a true boundary corner where he can really turn and run with Ohio State, Penn State. Maybe he's not that. There's not a lot of those guys. But this, to me, fits the mold in this class of what they were looking for. This fits the mold of what they were looking for with a Stroud, with a Gentry. This fits in a little bit with a type like Jameer Washington, who will just come up and hit people. Similar type of film, just big, physical corner who will come up and tackle people. And you need those players because the football has transitioned more and more into space, right? You got to be able to tackle their playmakers in space. This is the type of cornerback that gives you that. I like to pick up. I also trust this staff with cornerbacks, with defensive backs. I think Paul Haynes is a good coach there, a good evaluator of talent. I think Max and Pat do a really good job. They were in early on some cornerbacks that blew up. They understand that at that spot, physical tools matter more than technique. Physical tools matter more than the current level of development. 6'1" corner who will come up and hit people. I like it. It's a good pickup late in the game. Let's get some of your comments here. See if there's any other notes I had. Yeah, it reminds me, like I said, of Raheem Stroud, Gentry type. I don't know if he can run as well as Stroud. Probably not. Stroud was a big track guy down in Florida. Will come up and hit people, cuts players down, big time special teams guy. Good feel for angles. Like you can see that he kind of has that sense of timing and how to track a ball carrier down from across the field. There's a bit of football intelligence there, I think, in his game. Again, I think the big question here is how fast is he? What's he run? I'm looking, see if I can find some track times with Warren or some 40 times. But late in the game, a cornerback like this, I like it. This feels like an evaluation they really like, a bit of an underrated prospect. And we're going to get into the cornerback room next, where this is a spot you need to add some more bodies and some more talent to. Okay, let's see what we got in the comments section here. Jason Geldon said, so he might be good in 3 years. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of recruiting, right? Like in 3 years, he'd be a redshirt sophomore. Like I feel like maybe the frustration there, but this is what you do in recruiting. You recruit for 3 years down the road. You don't recruit for next year. If you're constantly recruiting for next year, you're in trouble. If you're constantly recruiting, hoping that a player is going to play as a redshirt freshman, you're in trouble. Like the goal is to have them good in 3 years. Like that's the ideal goal. In 3 years, they're in the 2 deep, and in 4 years, they're a starter. People will say you can't do that in the NIL era. I think you can. I think you just have to prioritize the right players. You have to, as a coach, build culture that gets people wanting to stay. And you're never going to get all of them. You're never going to get every one of them, but I think that's the goal. That's how you do it. So yeah, he might be good in 3 years. And to me, that's kind of the whole point of it. That's the whole goal of it. Slim Lewis said, we're trading one Max school commit who's more of a safety than a cornerback for another. Yeah, let's talk about that. Amari Snowden is in the portal, and Jonas DeClune is in the portal. So you lost 2 corners from that room. Now you're adding one in, and the cycle churns, right? Let's keep going here. Some more comments. Bo Dragon, last position to care about. We get someone from a school not even our caliber. Listen, there's a lot of players who have come from schools that aren't Wisconsin's caliber that have played really, really good ball. Slim Lewis says 6'1" though. Brady Collins can put some weight on him. Unranked by rivals. On3 says he's the 152nd best corner in the country. This is the type who might develop though. Yeah, this is the developmental guy. Like you get him in, you trust the eval. It's similar to getting an athletic wing in basketball that is a little unskilled. And not that he's unskilled. I like the ball skills actually. I think he flashes pretty good ball skills. But this is similar to you get an athlete at a position of need and you see if you can develop him. It's not more complicated than that. It's getting a raw receiver. Not raw, but a receiver who's maybe a little underranked, under recruited, and he's 6'3" and he runs pretty well and he's good ball skills. You take those guys all day and you see what you can do, because either you trust your coaches and strength and conditioning to develop or you don't. But if you do, then this is the type of kid you get in on. And this is a player who's had he was committed to Miami of Ohio, but he's at Michigan State, NC State, Duke. Like this is a player who's had other Power 4 schools start to come after him. Okay. And this is a late riser where other schools have started to take notice and say, yeah, the skill set here is worth taking a flyer on at a Power 4 level and see if we can develop him. Because if you do, again, there's just not a lot of cornerbacks this size that come up and hit and play like that. So I think it's potentially a Forkern type of guy. I know I keep mentioning that, but that's who he reminds me of. Probably maybe a little recency bias there. Maybe a Caesar Williams type. Probably can run a little better than Caesar. Jason Geldon says, do we have a chance on Lenny Miller-Moss? I don't think so. Justice in Motion needs to hit the weight room. Yeah, no, I agree. I 100% agree. But that's fine. He's a freshman. He's in high school, right? And I think if you look at the film, he doesn't look 160. I'm sorry. I think he looks a little bigger than that. The way he's hitting people, the way he's taking people down, he doesn't play like 160. I'll say that. And that's probably more important than the listed height and weight, which a lot of those listed heights and weights aren't always accurate either. All right, we'll take one quick break. Friends of the show, we're going to come back and talk about that cornerback room because we had a couple guys leave out of there. And now you got a couple people coming in. What does that room look like next year? Well, plus we'll continue to get all your comments on this commit. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. First, a quick break for our friends of the show over at Gametime. And again, I'm talking to you right now. We're conversating through this medium of television, of radio, of podcasting. Let's go do stuff together. We're going to do a group event this year. We're going to get the tickets on Gametime. We're going to do a basketball event. I'm going to get a block of tickets, and we're just going to get a group of the Locked On Badgers community together. We're going to sit together. So we'll go into the Kohl Center together. We'll cheer together. We'll leave together. It's going to be phenomenal. And it's going to be made possible by Gametime, because I'm going to get better tickets there, better prices, better seats, better selection. It's all going to be done on Gametime. It's going to be incredible. I can't wait to do it. That's going to be over at Gametime. Again, if you want tickets to the events, go to Gametime. Do more stuff in your life. Download the Gametime app today. Use code Locked On for $20 off. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. And create the account, redeem code Locked On College for $20 off over at Gametime. Go do more stuff in life. Speaking of doing more stuff, recruiting. Big time get NSD week, National Signing Day week. A lot of stuff going on. Let's talk about this cornerback room for a little bit, because Nizer Forker, the guy I keep comparing kind of Cairo Skanes to, redshirt senior, out the door. You've lost Max Lofi. You've lost Delancey. You've lost Snowden to the portal. You've lost DeClona to the portal. That room is suddenly looking a lot lighter heading into next year, right? I'm doing a quick look on the roster right now, and it's possible I missed a name here, but Ricardo Holman is up in the air. If you remember, he originally was on the list to be honored at senior day, and he was kind of pulled back. It makes me think he's coming back. I don't think this was the greatest Ricardo Holman year. He may want to come back and get another year of film for the NFL. I don't think interceptions matter as much as people think, right? Interceptions, turnovers to some degree are a byproduct of luck, but I thought there were moments down the year where Rico gave up some stuff that I'm not used to seeing Rico give up. And I don't know if the season as a whole just wore on people. There was a double move against Nebraska where I'm just used to Rico eating that up. Just being too technically good with his eyes, too good with his footwork, too experienced. And he got him on the double move, or on third down, Rico grabbed the receiver. I'm like, that doesn't seem like Rico. So maybe he comes back, which would be huge for the Badgers. Not the greatest Rico year, or notwithstanding, he's still a really good college cornerback. And if you can anchor your secondary around him, you're doing a pretty good thing. So he could come back. But besides that, suddenly you get super young. You have Lucas, you have Agard, you have Jace Arnold. Most of those other veterans are gone. So that room starts to look a little iffy. You probably got to go to the portal, try to find a veteran or two. They've done that the last couple of years, going to places like Toledo, Air Force, even though the Air Force kid couldn't get in and couldn't play. But they're probably going to have to go to the portal. But that's why adding guys like Cairo Skanes is so important. It's refilling the pipeline, right? Then you look at this 25 class, and Xavier Lucas is able to play early. Are any of these 2025 kids able to play early? You have a Remington Moss, who's a bit of a hybrid safety corner. I think he's more of a safety, to be honest, but he's going to be coming in. I really like his build. Jamari Washington is a really interesting prospect. Also very physical, much like Cairo Skanes. He'll come up and hit people. He's got some of the best, most physical DB film I've seen in a while coming to Wisconsin. He's going to be interesting. Could he play a little early? Maybe. And then you have Jameer Scott, and you have Cairo Skanes. So I don't think Skanes probably plays early. I think he is a guy who needs to get into the strength and conditioning department. But that room's going to look interesting next year. You're going to need to hang on to the young guys. And then Agard's going to have to play a lot. I think Jay Harper, hopefully, if he sticks around. Xavier Lucas is going to have a big role. Maybe Rico comes back. And then probably a portal guy. And hopefully that portal guy is more like a Nizer Forker than some of the other portal guys we brought in. A player who can play, who can give you reps. But that room is definitely going to be interesting next year. And that's all the more important why you have to get guys like Skanes. You have to keep filling that pipeline. We had a question here about Paul Haynes, and I lost it. But let's get some of these other comments into. Oh, here we go. Tyler Strieber says, Ryan, what do you know about Paul Haynes? Jesse Temple on the camp said Snowden told him he'd still be at UW if it wasn't for Haynes. Snowden and DeClona hit the portal, and we add a Mac guy. I don't know, question mark, angry emoji. No, that's not an angry emoji. That's a nervous emoji. I should watch the Emoji Movie again to find out. Yeah, I would say this, and I mentioned this on our Discord. And by the way, if anyone's interested, come join the Discord. We talk Badgers and basically everything else outside of politics, so it's a great spot. But I mentioned this on the Discord sometimes, and I think the players have a great voice and a great perspective, but sometimes I get a little leery of the player exit interviews where you're only ever going to get their side. And it's not to say anything Amari Snowden is saying is BS or anything like that. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But there's always a coach's side, a player's side, and then a perspective somewhere in between the two. My feel on it is I've talked to people who have considered Paul Haynes a pretty respected cornerback coach. I think he's done a good job of recruiting in general. And I think for the most part, our cornerbacks have been pretty solid. I think Nazir Forkerin took a big jump this year. Rico was great last year and solid for the most part of the first part of this year for sure. Xavier Lucas is able to get on the field early, and that's a Paul Haynes recruit. I tend to think sometimes it's just not a fit, and sometimes players aren't doing everything they need to do to get on the field or seeing the bigger picture. That's me just saying in the broad sense, players don't always have the greatest sense of why they're not playing versus someone else. Okay. That's not to say anything against Snowden or anything else. I would lean towards caution though, when we're only getting one side of the story is what I would say on that. Trend Sensing says, how long until they hire an offensive coordinator since some of the candidates are coming off the board? Should be a couple days. That change should be wrapping up. I'm not sure if it, I don't know. We're going to have to see. We're going to have to see on that one. Zach Bart says, feels like Jameer Washington light. That's a great one. Makes tackles, instinctual, has that kind of game, but you can tell he's a Mac guy. Yeah, I think he's that type of guy. Jameer Washington, Forkerin, and he's a guy who's going to need a couple years of development. But that's okay. It's okay to get somebody, develop him, and then if he's a redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior, then he starts to make an impact into the 2 deep, maybe pushing it to be a starter. That's not a bad thing. And the other thing I'd say is that spots like corner, receiver, edge, maybe running back, but at spots like that are purely kind of physical, measurable athlete spots, sometimes it's okay just to stockpile a couple projects and see if you hit. It's a couple lottery tickets and see if you can hit. Because if you can, again, with his type of ceiling, if you go back to the Paul Chryst, Jim Leonard, that type of recruiting, it felt like the level of cornerback recruiting they did was they targeted a different guy, right? They targeted, to me, more of a 5'10-ish, 5'11-ish guy that felt more sound, more technique sound, safer. This is kind of the opposite of that, targeting more athletes and seeing if you can develop them. Slim Lewis says, film looks good. Not sure if he's athletic enough to shut down Oregon, Ohio State cornerback receivers. He's not. Let's just be real. Very few cornerbacks are. Look at the thoroughbreds, Ohio State, Oregon, the Tez Johnsons, the Marvin Harrison Juniors, the Abukas. Like, you can go down and down the list, man. Nobody's shutting those guys down. But you get people who make it harder, right? You get people who are 6'1" that make the windows tighter. You get guys who can develop, and you get guys who can tackle in space when those athletes get the ball. That's what it's about. It's about making it harder, but nobody's shutting those dudes down. Those guys are thoroughbreds for a reason. Let's keep going here. Brian Hannigan says, love the ball skills. I agree. Dennis Reynolds says, we are screwed at quarterback. I don't think we're screwed. I do think if you're talking about next year, I do think, the young guys have to take a step up. Agard, Lucas, they'll have to bring someone in the portal. This is ideally Rico's back. If Rico goes out, then you need a couple guys in the portal, and then it gets really dicey because you're not going to find – where are you going to find a solid starting cornerback that can step in and be CB1 in the Big Ten with the schedule we have next year? That gets super dicey. But let's be honest, like this wasn't a lockdown secondary this year either. I think it was the strength of the team to some degree, but this secondary needed to get better this year anyway. I think some of these young players could take a step up. Bo Dragon says, Forkerin looked terrible most of the year. I disagree. I know Bo and I disagree often. I disagree. I thought Forkerin was really solid. I thought he had a really solid cornerback year. He doesn't have deep speed. He's not an elite corner. Like, we're not talking about Darryl Green here. But yeah, I thought he was physical. He tackled really well. He was good. He was a good, solid cornerback number 2 for me. Greg Linscomb said, we have done a great job of stacking. Now we have to develop. I agree. Smo dropped the bombs. Texas Badger said, now it's time for the coaches to develop these recruits. Yeah, that's it, right? Like, now we are year 3 into this thing. So this is one of the things I said with the portal the other day is now you have to start relying on that 24 class, the freshmen, even a couple freshmen in this class, the 23 class. Those players now have to start becoming the dudes on this team. No more excuses. Like, not as much for the 24 class. They're going to be redshirt freshmen next year. It's not entirely fair, but that 23 class is going to be redshirt sophomores. They have to start filling into the depth. And if they don't, if none of them can, or There's no redshirt freshman that can start filling into those gaps. Then you do have to start wondering, well, where's the development? Because that's the next step here. You can recruit great all year long, all day long, right? And this class coming up is really good. Last year's class is really good. If you don't develop them, it doesn't matter, right? Landing talented players doesn't matter if you can't identify them or develop them. So that's the next step here, and we got to see it happen. I still think this staff can do that. I still think this is the developmental staff, but we're going to see, right? To Texas Badgers' point, now they got to develop them. Okay, let's keep going here. Texas Badger also says 4 wins next year. Oh, gosh, that's so depressing. You might be right. It's so depressing, though, man. He said, I predicted 5 this year, and no one believed me. 5 was my floor this year. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was 6. I was wrong. I mean, no matter what, I was wrong. All right, let's pause. Actually, one more here from Trent Brown. Great pickup. Providence State School, some elite alumni athletes that panned out, totally undervalued. That's an awesome pickup. That's an awesome comment right there. All right, let's pause here for 1 sec. One more quick break for our friends of the show. Now I want to get into some of your saved comments that I have as well on today's Locked On Badgers. First, today's episode brought to you by our incredible friends over at FanDuel. Go check out the best sports book that I know of, the one that Locked On uses, the official sports book of the NFL. Listen, the NFL endorsement's one thing, but you got my endorsement. Go check out Locked On. Go check out FanDuel.com. Sorry. Your first $5 bet, if it hits, gets you $150 in bonus bets guaranteed over at FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook of Locked On, of Ryan Herring's, and of the NFL. I don't know how you'd order those 3 in importance. I'm sure FanDuel's super thrilled to be the official sportsbook of Ryan Herring's. But if you go over there, it's a great time. Futures, parlays, teasers, spreads. You got basketball, college, and NBA. The NFL's going on. Obviously, college football playoffs are going to be coming up. That's going to be an awesome opportunity to spice up your sports weekend with a 12-team playoff. Are you kidding me? I'm going to do like a 12-team parlay. Well, you won't be able to do all of that at once, obviously, because of buys, but I'm going to parlay the sucker out of that. And I'm probably not going to do well because I don't bet well. But I'm going to have fun doing it. Do it responsibly over at FanDuel.com. Spice up your sports weekend, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Okay, let's get some of your comments here. Let's finish it off with that. And again, because the community as part of the show is, quite frankly, honestly, sometimes the only thing that keeps me going. Sometimes doing a show every day is a bit of a grind. It's awesome, but it's the community that I just love interacting with, that we keep rolling with. And that really brings a lot of joy to my life. Let's go comments here. I was talking about running back recruiting the other day on yesterday Today's show, and David P said, on the running back recruiting, probably tough to get a guy willing to commit when there are 3 in the class before him. At the very least, it makes it tougher. Yeah. I mean, the point I made on running back recruiting is I don't think you can go a cycle without getting a guy. And what Dave is saying, well, how do you get a guy with Atuka, Jones, and Dupree? You get it by selling. You get it by recruiting anything else. And he's making a good point. I get it. It's easier to recruit when there's immediate playing time available, but part of recruiting is finding what you can sell and landing bodies. I just got done talking about how you recruit cornerbacks for 2 or 3 years down the road. Running backs a little different. I think running backs expect to play earlier, but you still got to get bodies in the pipeline. I have a hard time thinking there's not one guy out there maybe committed to a lower level school that had some athletic measurables that it would have made sense to try to flip, get in the pipeline, see if you have something there. I still would have liked a running back in this class, in other words. But I get David's point. Nick F says every position needs to be addressed in the portal this year. I mean, you could make an argument for any of them. I think there's spots where I don't think you need to go to the running back room necessarily unless you lose guys. I don't think offensive line is going to be tough. I like the younger guys in that room. I think you're going to be okay there. Maybe get a veteran guy. But defense line, yes. I think linebacker probably need depth. Cornerback, I just said. I think safety's kind of interesting. There's some younger ballers there. I'm not as stressed about safety. You might need to look at a kicker. It's no shade to Vacos, but he hit 63% of his field goals this year. That is last in the Big Ten, 17th in the Big Ten. So you may need to look at kicker. Definitely got to get quarterback. I think receiver. So yeah, maybe you're not wrong, Nick. Maybe you're not wrong. But I kind of wonder too, how many should that be a surprise? How many 5-7, 6-6, 7-5 teams are out there looking at the position and say there's absolutely no way we can get better at this spot in the portal? I think every team outside of the elite guys are probably looking at their roster and saying there's a lot of spots we can improve if we find the right guy in the portal. So I don't know if that's that unique, really, when you think about it and you look at how this team performed this year. Greg Lincecum says, can we adjust the offense to get more running backs on the field? I know, yes. The answer is yes. It's going to depend heavily on who we get at the offensive coordinator spot. That was one of the big draws of Brendan Marion, the UNLV guy. He uses a lot of 2 running back sets. It kind of sounds like Brendan Marion is moving off of the potential list. We'll just say that. Doesn't sound like that's going to happen. But yeah, you got to find the right offensive coordinator who can do it. But you can absolutely incorporate multiple running backs in the offense. Let's see. Jordan Stewart says, you got to wonder who the OC will be. If it's Stenbrock or Geno, you probably wait until the middle of January. Wonder who the surprise hire will be this time. I don't know if there's going to be any surprise hire. I feel like all the potential possible names have been put out there. I really do. And I do feel like there's some candidates that the Badgers kicked the tires on. And for one reason or the other, whether they had another opportunity that came up or maybe initial conversations didn't work out, the Badgers have kind of moved on or that other parties moved on. So maybe that's why it's taking a little bit longer to go. Texas Badger says, Tressel needs to go. Some of this year's stats are the worst since 1946 when they started keeping the stats. Yeah, I can't argue that. I mean, we finished almost last in the Big Ten, or in the country in tackles for loss, sacks, disruptive plays. The Iowa game plan, I'm still a little distraught over. A team that's just going to run the ball down your throats. Just play a 4-4, play a 3-4, get more big bodies in there. I thought that was a bad game plan. I also I'll keep saying it. I think he doesn't have the horses. I don't think he has the talent. And if you want to get rid of Tressel, that's fine, but you better upgrade that talent in the front 7 as well. Otherwise, whoever you're bringing in next, it's not going to make that big a difference. You can change. Think of it this way: you can change out truck drivers, but unless you overhaul that semi, it's not going to get that load over the road any quicker. I don't know anything about trucking. I feel like I used that vernacular correctly. Let me know if I did not. Adam Fuller says, what do you think about Chucky Hepburn balling out at Louisville? Happy for him? I got no issues there. Because here's the thing. Sometimes in life, a change is better for both parties. Sometimes in life, you have that breakup and you're like, I really liked Amy. This is actually not about a real Amy, by the way. Or is it? Sometimes you're like, I really liked Amy. She was great. How is my life going to go on? And it turns out you go on and meet your soulmate, and Amy goes on and starts a Fortune 500 company and just crushes it. And it's better for both of you to move on. I think Chucky needed a new start. I think he wanted to get out of where he was at, playing a bit of a different style. But I also think what you saw last year, Chucky Hepburn's defense was not good. Like, he is a good defensive player, but it wasn't good last year. He was inconsistent shooting the ball. We didn't have the version of Chucky Hepburn that Louisville has. Wisconsin did not have last year. We had an inconsistent shooter who couldn't get over picks. I don't know. I think he was a little burned out at Wisconsin, quite frankly. And sometimes a switch is better on both ends. And I think what you're seeing this year from Wisconsin is a little addition by subtraction with not just AJ Storr and not just Tyler Wall's inability to kind of spread the floor, but also you're getting better defense. You're getting a more cohesive spread the ball type of attack that I don't think you get that with Chucky. Now, it's no shade to Chucky. Like, Chucky would have been better with these shooters around him too, with Tanjay playing the way he is. But I think it kind of worked out just fine on both ends. See any more comments here. I mean, there are a bunch more comments. Justin Tyler says could be a good special team or two. Yeah, his special teams work is really good. Steve L, if Hallman and Lucas next year, then you feel very good. That could be a good cornerback group, right? If Hallman comes back and Lucas takes another step, Lucas is a better athlete than Nizer Forkrid, right? So you could get better at the cornerback side next year, and then your number 2s are Agard and maybe Harper, or Agard and a transfer guy. That's not a bad top 4, assuming that these young guys take a step. And I have no doubt that Xavier Lucas is going to take a step. That dude is wired the right way. Okay. I think we'll wrap it there, guys. As always, really appreciate it. On Wisconsin, Badgers get a nice commitment tonight. National Signing Day is coming up. Tons of content. When you're done here, go check out Locked On College. Check out Locked On Big Ten for all the latest news in the conference over the Locked On Big Ten channel. On Wisconsin, and we will talk later. Badgers get a commitment for their 2025 NSD class.